Two sisters walked into a shopping center on a warm spring afternoon and were never seen again. No cries for help, no signs of struggle, just silence. For nearly 40 years, their disappearance remained a painful mystery. Then one day, a career criminal already behind bars opened his mouth and a horrifying secret buried in the mountains of Virginia finally came to light. What exactly happened in those lost hours between the pizza place and home? And why was the one witness who claimed to know the truth ignored for decades? If you want to uncover the shocking truth behind these questions, then like this video and subscribe to my channel, Unscripted Tales, and please help me reach 5,000 likes on this story. It is a challenge from my mother, and your one click can help me win it for her. Crest Hill, Virginia in the spring of 1975 was everything families hoped for when they dreamed of peaceful suburban life. Neatly trimmed hedges lined quiet roads, bicycles scattered across front lawns, and screen doors echoed with the laughter of children rushing in and out to play. Life moved gently on Willow Creek Drive, especially inside the warm and lively home of the Hale family. Douglas Hale was a local radio personality, a familiar voice on WVRM-FM to thousands of listeners. He was the friendly tone that started their mornings, but at home, he was just a father of four, cracking jokes over cereal and helping with homework. His wife, Evelyn Hale, ran the household with quiet strength and grace. Their children, Andrew at 15, Andrew at 9, and the two sisters at the heart of this story, Hannah and Lily, were close-knit and full of life. Hannah, 12, was curious and clever, already standing at the edge of teenage independence. Lily, 10, sparkled with energy and charm, still holding on to childhood's wonder. That year, March carried more excitement than usual. Hannah and Lily's birthdays were only days apart, and the girls were already whispering about presents, cake flavors, and matching outfits. The Hale house was bubbling with anticipation and joy. But that joy would not last. March 25, 1975, dawned bright and breezy, a perfect day for spring break adventures. With no school and nothing urgent on the schedule, the Hale family started their morning at a slow, happy pace. Pancakes sizzled in the kitchen while the kids talked over their plans. Natalie announced he would head to the community basketball court, and Andrew eagerly followed, thrilled to be included. The girls, however, had their own idea. Ridgeview Plaza was not far, just a short walk through the neighborhood. The Easter decorations had gone up in store windows, and the Pepper Tree, their favorite pizza spot, had a lunch special. Hannah and Lily talked excitedly about visiting the shops, maybe buying something small with their saved-up money. Evelyn Hale smiled at her daughter's plans. She handed them each $2 enough for pizza, and perhaps a trinket, and gave them one clear rule: be home by 4 p.m. Not 4:01, 4 o'clock sharp. The girls nodded eagerly. They had always followed their mother's rules. At 11 a.m., the Hale siblings split paths. The boys headed toward the basketball court. The sisters turned in the opposite direction, hand in hand, chatting and laughing, as they walked toward Ridgeview Plaza, unaware that someone was already waiting. Someone who would turn an innocent spring afternoon into the beginning of a nightmare that would echo for decades. The walk to Ridgeview Plaza was one Hannah and Lily had taken many times before. The path felt familiar and safe. They strolled past white fences, neighbors' gardens blooming with early spring flowers, and quiet streets where the only sound was the rustle of wind through trees. The sisters chatted about their birthdays, shared small jokes, and laughed the way only best friends do. To anyone watching, they were just two happy girls out for pizza and window shopping. They arrived at the plaza just before 1 p.m. Ridgeview Plaza was busy but not overcrowded. Families were running errands, teenagers lingered outside the record store, and lunchgoers filled small restaurants. Hannah and Lily made their way to the Pepper Tree, where the smell of melted cheese and warm crust filled the air. They had just sat down with their pizza when something strange caught their attention. A man in a brown suit was standing nearby. He looked neat and confident, like a businessman. He held a leather briefcase in one hand and a small microphone in the other. From the open briefcase, a tape recorder peeked out, an expensive and unusual piece of equipment for 1975. The man smiled and told the girls that he worked with a radio station. He was asking kids to speak into the microphone so he could play their voices on air later. For Hannah and Lily, it made sense. Their father worked in radio. They understood how microphones and recordings worked. The man seemed friendly. Other children also came over, curious and excited. They laughed and took turns speaking into the microphone, imagining their classmates hearing them on the radio. A neighborhood boy who knew the sisters stood nearby and watched. He noticed something unusual. The man walked with a faint limp. It was barely noticeable, but once you saw it, you could not ignore it. Not far from them, another person was lurking. This man was different. He was young, maybe in his early 20s, but there was something off about him. He had long, greasy hair and deep acne scars on his cheeks. His jacket was worn and dirty, and he kept following groups of girls around the shopping center. His eyes did not just glance, they stared, cold, unblinking, wrong. A group of teenagers noticed his behavior and tried to scare him off by shouting at him. He did not flinch. He just kept watching. One of those girls remembered seeing the same creepy young man staring at Hannah and Lily at around 2 p.m. Hannah and Lily were seen again. This time, it was Natalie, their older brother. He had come to the plaza to buy a new kite and spotted them through the window of the pepper tree. They were sitting together at a table, eating their pizza, pointing and giggling as people walked past. They looked like they were having a fun, carefree day. Natalie decided not to interrupt and let them enjoy their time. That moment, innocent and calm, would be the last confirmed sighting of both girls alive, at 2:30 p.m. Another person who knew the family reported seeing the sisters walking away from Ridgeview Plaza, heading west, toward their neighborhood. They appeared completely normal. No fear, no running, just two girls walking home the way they always did. And then, they were gone. They never made it home. Somewhere in the short walk between the shopping center and their front door, something happened. Something silent, something evil. What did their mother feel when the clock struck 4 and the girls had not walked through the door? The clock in the Hale family kitchen ticked past 4 p.m. Evelyn Hale stood at the counter, a dish towel in her hand, staring out the window. Her eyes drifted to the quiet street, then back to the clock. It was not like her daughters to be late. Hannah and Lily were usually the first to follow the rules, especially when their favorite meal, fried chicken, was on the menu that night. By 4:15 p.m., the usual sounds of the girls rushing through the door had not come. No laughter, no footsteps, no familiar voices calling out from the front hall. Evelyn kept cooking, but her heart was no longer in it. She turned toward the window again. Still nothing. Maybe they had stopped to chat with a friend. Maybe they lost track of time. That was what she told herself. By 5 p.m., the food remained untouched on the counter. The quiet in the house had become sharp, heavy. Evelyn moved from room to room, looking for any sign of her girls. She opened the front door, stepped out, and looked both ways down the street. The shadows were getting longer. Still, she told herself to stay calm. At 5:15 p.m., her calm gave way to dread. She called neighbors. She called friends. No one had seen Hannah and Lily since they left Ridgeview Plaza. When Douglas Hale arrived home from the radio station, he found his wife sitting next to the phone, her face pale, her hands trembling. She looked up at him and said only 4 words. "They are not home." Douglas did not hesitate. He picked up the phone and dialed the Montgomery County Police Department. The officer who answered spoke in a steady, professional voice. He explained that in most cases, children turned up within a few hours. Maybe they were with friends, maybe they forgot the time. But Douglas and Evelyn knew better. This was not like their daughters. Something was wrong. Very wrong. At exactly 7 p.m., the official report was filed. Hannah Hale, age 12, and Lily Hale, age 10, were listed as missing persons. What began that evening as a small police response quickly grew into something larger. Officers drove through Crest Hill with flashing lights. They knocked on every door along Willow Creek Drive. They asked questions. They checked yards, garages, alleyways. Within the first day, trained dogs were brought in to trace the girls' scent. Their trail leads straight to Ridgeview Plaza. Through the walkway, past the food court, out into the parking lot, and then nothing. The scent stopped, as if the girls had disappeared into the air. Over the next 48 hours, the search exploded across Crest Hill. Vacant lots were examined. Parks, storm drains, and nearby ponds were searched. Volunteers poured in from every part of town. Flyers were posted on every shop window and light pole. Photographs of Hannah and Lily smiled back at everyone. The reward fund reached $9,000 at Fortune in 1975, and then came a phone call that shook the Hale family to its core. On April 4th, 10 days after the girls vanished, the phone rang. Evelyn answered it with trembling hands. A voice, cold, masked, unfamiliar, told her he had the girls. He demanded $10,000 in exchange for their safe return. The police were now monitoring every call. The plan was set. A briefcase, meant to appear full of money, was left in a courthouse restroom in Annapolis, but inside was only $11, stacked to look like much more. Officers watched from hidden spots, hoping someone would show. Hours passed. Then the voice called again. This time, furious. He said he had seen the police. He said the deal was off. Douglas demanded to speak to his daughters. He begged. The line went quiet. Then, click, that phone never rang again. What did the boy with the kite see that the rest of the town missed? As the days turned into weeks, Cresthill became a town holding its breath. The posters of Hannah and Lily Hale were no longer just paper on poles. They were reminders that something terrible had happened here. That two young girls had vanished without a sound. And still, no answers. Calls poured into the police station. Tips came from every direction. Some were wild guesses. Others felt possible. One call came from a boy named William Denton, just 11 years old, who said he had seen two girls in a white Pontiac speeding down Route 211. He said one of them looked like she had been crying. She was blonde, and she looked afraid. He swore she looked like Lily. The report made sense. Route 211 was a road someone might take if they were trying to get out of the area quickly. The police took the tip seriously. They sent units into Virginia. They asked for backup. They questioned everyone who had been on that stretch of road. But nothing stuck. The very next day, a new sighting came in. This one was more chilling. A man in Manassas reported seeing two girls bound and gagged in the back of a beige Ford station wagon. The driver noticed him staring. Instead of ignoring him, the driver sped up. He ran a red light. He turned sharply toward the highway and disappeared. That plate number DMT6 was burned into the witness's memory, and it was a Maryland plate. Investigators scrambled. They contacted every motor vehicle office across nearby states. They pulled records, searched files, followed dozens of leads based on every possible variation of that plate. Hundreds of vehicles were examined, but every time they felt close, the trail went cold. Even with all that effort, no hard evidence surfaced. But the town did not stop. Cresthill changed. Volunteers formed a group of citizens who used CB radios to stay connected. They searched parking lots, abandoned barns, roadsides. They worked long hours, day after day, hoping their radios would be the first to crack the silence, but the radios stayed quiet. On May 23rd, 2 months after Hannah and Lily vanished, the search took a new turn. The lieutenant governor sent in over 100 National Guardsmen. These were not weekend helpers. These were trained soldiers. They moved through the forest in a grid pattern. They searched with metal detectors, shovels and maps marked in red ink. They turned over every stone, searched every ditch, walked every path in the woods of Montgomery County. But even after all of that, no sign of Hannah, no sign of Lily, no clothing, no shoes, no bodies, and without a crime scene, there was nothing for investigators to hold on to. By the summer of 1975, Douglas and Evelyn Hale had to face what no parent ever should. Their daughters were most likely gone. The birthdays passed. The cake was never cut. The candles were never lit. The Hale house became quiet. Not peaceful, just empty. But behind the silence, investigators were not done. They kept digging. They kept questioning. And their eyes kept returning to the man at the shopping plaza. The man with the limp. The man with the tape recorder. And there was someone else to someone younger. Someone with a face covered in scars. Who would not stop staring. One teenager claimed he saw both of them, and even the abduction. But the police did not believe a word he said. Just 1 week after Hannah and Lily disappeared, a teenager walked into the Montgomery County Police Department. His name was Nathan Lowell. He was 18 years old, nervous, and said he had seen something that no one else had. He told the officers that he had been at Ridgeview Plaza on March 25th. He said he saw the man with the tape recorder. He saw that man force two young girls into a red Camaro in the parking lot. He described their faces, their clothes, their voices, and the details. They matched. Nathan said the girls looked scared. They did not scream, but they looked like they were trying to hold back tears. He told the police that he knew something terrible had happened. It could have been the break investigators needed. But then, they gave Nathan a lie detector test, and he failed. The moment those results came in, everything changed. The officers decided he had made the story up. Maybe for attention, maybe for the reward money. They did not know, and they did not care. They marked his file with one word: lied. That one-page report was shoved into a folder, and then into a box, and then into the back of the case file. Forgotten. What they did not realize was this: anything. Lowell was not just making things up. He was hiding something. Something real. Something terrible. And for the next 38 years, no one would look at him again. Years later, the police focused their attention on another man. A dangerous predator named Frederick Holloway. He had a history of using gadgets to lure children, just like the man with the tape recorder. He had been in the area during the week the girls went missing. His methods were suspicious. His past was disturbing. But no matter how hard they tried, investigators could not place Holloway at Ridgeview Plaza on the exact day Hannah and Lily vanished. The pieces almost fit, but almost was not enough. The case against him collapsed. One after another, leads fell apart. Witnesses faded. Evidence disappeared. The story of Hannah and Lily Hale slowly slipped into the shadows of time until decades later, when a cold case detective opened an old box. Inside that box was Nathan Lowell's forgotten statement, and something about it gave the detective chills. By 2013, almost 4 decades had passed. The Hale family's pain had not faded. The world had changed, but their loss remained frozen in time. Many of the original investigators had retired. Some had passed away, and the case had gathered dust in the corner of the evidence room. Then, something unexpected happened. A seasoned detective named Carter Renner was assigned to review old unsolved cases. He was known for his patience, his methodical work, and for never walking away from a case, no matter how cold it seemed. When he opened the boxes containing the Hale case files, he knew it would be overwhelming. Thousands of pages, dozens of interviews, folders with faded ink and brittle paper. But as he read through each document, he found one that made him stop. It was short, just 1 page. The witness's name was Nathan Lowell. The note read, "Polygraph, lied, that was all," but something about the statement did not sit right with Renner. He read it again, and again. Then he found an old mugshot from 1977, Nathan Lowell's face from years earlier. The detective leaned back in his chair. The hair, the jawline, the hollow eyes, they looked familiar, very familiar. He compared it to the old composite sketch from 1975. The one drawn after multiple witnesses described a younger man hanging around Ridgeview Plaza. The man with the rough skin, the stare, the strange behavior. They matched. Renner dug deeper into Nathan's background. What he uncovered was horrifying. Nathan Lowell was no lost teenager seeking attention. He was a repeat offender, a violent man, a predator. By 2013, Nathan was already in prison, serving a sentence in Delaware for child abuse. His rap sheet was long. Multiple states, multiple victims. His crimes were not a mistake. They were a pattern. Renner made a decision. He packed his files. He drove to the prison, and he sat down across from Nathan Lowell for the first time. The detective said nothing at first. Then Nathan leaned forward. His voice was calm. "I know why you are here. You are here about those 2 missing girls." And just like that, the silence broke. Why did Nathan confess, after all those years of hiding the truth? Detective Carter Renner sat across the table, watching Nathan Lowell closely. There were no handcuffs between them, no shouting, no pressure, just silence. Then Nathan spoke. "I remember those girls. I saw what happened. I was there." It was not just what he said, it was how easily he said it, as if he had been waiting for someone to ask him. After nearly 40 years, the mystery that had haunted the Hale family was no longer locked away in silence. The man who had once been dismissed as a liar now seemed ready to tell the truth. Renner leaned in carefully and showed Nathan 2 photographs. One was of Hannah, the other of Lily. They were young, smiling, frozen in time. Nathan did not hesitate. "Those are the girls from Ridgeview Plaza," he said. He described the day, the shopping center, the tape recorder man. He described the car, a red Camaro, the time, the weather, the crowd. And then the moment the girls were forced into the vehicle. What shocked the detective most was that Nathan remembered details that were never shared with the public. Small things, exact store names, the way the girls reacted, where they were standing. These were not things someone could have guessed from newspaper clippings. These were memories. Still, Nathan did not say he took the girls. Not yet. He said he saw someone else do it. At first, he pointed the finger at a man named Franklin Reed, another known predator from the 1970s. Nathan claimed Franklin had a history with child trafficking, and that he was the one who took the sisters. Nathan described being there, watching, but being too afraid to stop it. He said the girls were taken to a house, that they were abused, and that they never came out. But Renner had heard these kinds of deflections before. He did not stop asking questions. He kept the interviews going. 1 session became 2, then 5, then 12. Over time, Nathan's story began to change. Franklin's name slowly faded from the center of the story, and Nathan started to talk about his own family. He mentioned his uncle, his cousin, his father, and then the basement, a dark concrete basement with 1 door and a padlock. He said that is where Hannah and Lily were taken. He said that is where they suffered, and he said he never saw them alive again. Was Nathan still hiding the worst parts of the truth? By the 12th interview, Nathan Lowell was no longer the silent teenager from the old police report. He was now a grown man, unraveling, piece by piece. What started as a story about someone else's crime was shifting, and what Detective Carter Renner was hearing was darker than anyone expected. Nathan said the girls were taken to a house in Hyattsville, Maryland. It belonged to his uncle, Richard Lowell. It was old, tucked away behind overgrown trees and almost invisible from the road. Beneath that house, Nathan said, was a basement. Not the kind families used to store Christmas decorations. This one had concrete walls, a single way in, and a steel padlock on the door. That was where Hannah and Lily were kept. He described the room as cold, silent, and far away from anything that could be heard from the street. He claimed his father and uncle were the ones who abused the girls. He said he was forced to watch. He said he was too scared to stop them. And then, he said something even worse. He never saw the girls come out of that basement. Detectives listened carefully. Nathan's voice trembled at times. He did not cry, but he paused. Often the kind of pause that comes when someone is staring down memories they wish they could erase. For weeks, the police tried to check his story, and in September of 2014, they finally received a search warrant for the old house in Hyattsville. The basement was still there, still locked, still sealed, and what they found inside made everyone stop cold. The walls were concrete, the ceiling low, the air thick. Forensic teams swept through every inch. They used chemicals, they used lights, and what those lights revealed was chilling. Blood. Traces of it on the floor, on the walls, even on the ceiling. The pattern told a clear story. Something violent had happened here, and it had not been quick. Samples were collected, tests were run. The blood was human, but it was too old, too degraded. The DNA had broken down after all those years. They could not say whose blood it was, but they knew it matched Nathan's story. Right down to the details he had given before, ever stepping foot inside again. And yet, Nathan was still holding something back, because the bodies of Hannah and Lily had never been found. Where did they go after that basement door closed forever? Nathan Lowell sat in that prison room, eyes lowered, voice quiet. He had described the basement. He had described what happened to Hannah and Lily. But the question still burned in the air. Where were the girls now? After a long pause, Nathan finally answered. He said they were taken to a place called Taylor's Ridge, a remote mountain area in Virginia where his family owned property. It was isolated. No neighbors close by. No one to hear or see anything. A place where people could make things disappear. He said his cousin, Henry, was there when he arrived. Nathan had come with 2 large army duffel bags. He told Henry not to ask questions, but Henry remembered the smell. It was thick, rotten, like something dead had been trapped in heat. Nathan said the bags were thrown into a fire that burned for days. At first, the detectives did not know if they could believe him, but they tracked down Henry. Now an older man, quiet and private. And when they asked about that day in 1975, Henry did not deny it. He said Nathan came up the mountain with bags. He remembered the fire. He remembered neighbors complaining about the smoke. The smell. One even said it smelled like something human had burned. But no one reported it. No one wanted to believe it. And then someone else came forward. Nathan's sister, Connie. She was a teenager back then. She remembered Nathan arriving at the mountain house. She remembered his girlfriend being with him pregnant, tired, nervous, and she remembered the green army bag. It was leaking something dark. Nathan claimed it was spoiled meat, but when Connie opened another bag filled with clothing, it was soaked in blood. She never forgot that. The detectives brought search teams to Taylor's Ridge, dogs, cadaver experts, forensic teams. They dug into the mountain soil. They sifted through ash and stone. What they found did not solve everything, but it came close. They uncovered small bone fragments, a human tooth, beaded jewelry, burned wire that looked like the kind used in glasses. None of it could be tied directly to Hannah or Lily. The fire had erased too much. The years had destroyed the rest, but the mountain had finally spoken, and the truth was almost ready to be heard. By a courtroom, what would Nathan say when he stood before a judge for the first time in over 40 years? In July of 2015, 40 years after Hannah and Lily Hale vanished during their short walk home, Nathan Lowell was finally charged. 2 counts of first-degree murder. Each tied to the death of a child, each carrying the weight of a lifetime. The charges also included details the public had never heard before. Crimes connected to sexual abuse. Crimes tied to the creation of illegal images. The courtroom did not just hold the past. It held every quiet horror the Hale family had lived with for 4 decades. Nathan was no longer the teenager. Dismissed in 1975, he was 60 now, gray-haired, tired, already serving time for other crimes. But this case was different. This time, he was standing for Hannah and Lily, and he knew it. In September of 2017, he stood before the judge. Reporters filled the back rows. Police officers who had searched for the girls in the woods of Crest Hill now sat silently beside the Hale family. Douglas and Evelyn were both there. Older, grayer, still holding hands, still waiting for something like justice. The judge asked the question, Nathan did not look at anyone when he answered. Guilty, on both counts. The courtroom did not move. No gasps. No celebration. Only silence. Because the truth had finally been spoken. But it had come far too late. Nathan was sentenced to 2 concurrent 48-year terms. That meant he would likely die in prison. He might become eligible for parole in his 80s, but no one truly believed he would walk free again. Even in his confession, Nathan tried to protect himself. He admitted to helping take the girls. He admitted to being there, but he insisted he did not commit the worst parts of the crime. He placed the blame on others, his uncle, his father, his cousin. He called himself a witness. A helper, never the one who hurt them. But the courtroom felt the weight of his words, and the walls of that concrete basement still echoed. Douglas and Evelyn did not cry. They thanked the detectives. They looked at the judge, and they left the courtroom with the same quiet dignity they had carried since the moment. Their daughters vanished. Justice had come, but the bodies had not. Why were Hannah and Lily never found, even after the fires on Taylor's Ridge? After the guilty plea, the news spread fast. Headlines across the country shared the final chapter of a case that had haunted families for generations. But even as Nathan Lowell was locked away for life, one painful truth remained. Hannah and Lily were still missing. Their remains had never been fully recovered. The fire on Taylor's Ridge had destroyed almost everything. The few bone fragments and the single tooth found in the dirt could not be matched through DNA. The heat from the flames and the passage of time had erased nearly all the physical evidence. There would be no graves, no place for the Hale family to visit, no stone with their names. Only memories. For Douglas and Evelyn Hale, now in their 80s, that absence was the deepest wound. They had waited 40 years for answers. They had been handed a name, a sentence. But not their daughters. What hurt even more was knowing that the truth might not have ended with Nathan, his uncle. Richard Lowell was named a person of interest. Nathan had placed him at the basement. He had described him as a direct part of the crimes. But the evidence was not strong enough. Richard was never charged. He walked free. And as time passed, more names came up. Nathan's cousin Thomas believed there were others. He said there was a conspiracy in the family. That the truth was bigger than what had been told. That more people had helped cover it up, but many of them were now gone, dead, or silent. The case could go no further. The Hale family never held funerals. They never saw their girls again, but they did thank the detectives. Especially Carter Renner. He had pulled a forgotten name from a dusty file and changed everything. Without him, Nathan would have remained just another cold lead. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children called the investigation one of the most remarkable cold case breakthroughs in American history. It was not just about the crime. It was about never giving up, even when every clue seemed lost. The disappearance of Hannah and Lily Hale changed how parents thought about safety. It changed how children were protected. It changed the laws. But above all, it reminded everyone of something else. That evil does not always hide in shadows. Sometimes it wears a smile, walks with a limp, carries a tape recorder. And sometimes, it lives in your own blood. What secret still lives inside? The only man left uncharged. Richard Lowell never sat in a courtroom. Never answered a single question under oath. Never faced a jury. Yet his name lived in every page of Nathan's confessions. Every mention of that basement. Every detail of what happened to Hannah and Lily. Nathan described Richard as calm, calculated, in control. He said Richard helped lock the girls in that basement. He said Richard took part in what happened next. He said it was Richard who gave the orders, but without solid physical evidence or a confession of his own, prosecutors could not build a case strong enough to hold in court. The basement held blood, but none that could be proven to belong to Richard's hands. The witnesses were limited. Some had died, others refused to talk, and Nathan's word alone. It was not enough, so Richard Lowell stayed free. He returned to his quiet life in Maryland. He never spoke to the press. He never sat for an interview. He never answered the question that everyone wanted to ask. Why? Douglas and Evelyn Hale knew his name. They knew what Nathan had said, but they were told the same thing over and over. There is not enough. The justice system had its limits. Without new evidence, there would be no second trial. No new charges. No second man in handcuffs. Even as Nathan served his sentence in Virginia, Richard remained untouched. But the whispers inside the Lowell family continued. Cousin Thomas kept speaking. He believed others were involved. He believed there was a plan to protect the guilty. That after the fire on Taylor's Ridge, more than just evidence had been buried. He said there were people still alive, who knew everything, but they stayed silent. Was Richard the final missing piece of a crime too deep to ever be fully uncovered? Of Course, here is the final version of the ending with your updated request included. 42 years. That is how long it took before the Hale family heard someone finally say what they had always feared. That Hannah and Lily were gone. That they had never stood a chance. That the people who took them did not just steal their lives, they tried to erase every piece of them. And yet, they did not succeed, because Hannah and Lily were never forgotten. Their names were spoken every year at vigils. Their photographs stayed in school hallways, on church bulletins, on refrigerator doors. Their story lived in the voices of parents warning their children to stay close. In police officers who never closed their notebooks. In one cold case detective who chose to read through every forgotten page until one tiny note changed everything. Nathan Lowell was guilty. He admitted it, and he will die in prison. The basement where the girls were trapped was found. The mountain where their bodies were burned was searched. The jewelry, the bone, the blood. All of it told a story that could no longer be hidden. And still, Richard Lowell walked free. He was never convicted. But to those who had followed the case, to those who read Nathan's words, to those who had lived in Crest Hill in 1975, his silence spoke louder than any sentence ever could. The truth is, not every mystery ends with a perfect answer. Not every guilty face sees a jail cell, but sometimes justice is not just about courtrooms. Sometimes justice is about remembering, about refusing to forget, about speaking their names long after the world moves on. Today, Douglas and Evelyn Hale are in their 80s. They never held funerals. They never found the remains of their daughters. But they found something else. They found the truth. And even after everything they lost, they held on to one thing that evil could never touch. Hope. If you are still watching this story, it means you felt what I felt while telling it. Please, take a second and click like. Subscribe to Unscripted Tales, and help me reach 5,000 likes on this story, because this is a challenge from my mother. And I really want to win this one for her. It is totally free. And before you scroll away, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching this story from?